So picture this. A major world power suddenly decides to punish one of its key partners, while at the exact same time rewarding that partner's biggest rival. It sounds wild, right? Well, that's precisely what seemed to happen when the Trump administration hit India with new tariffs while also announcing a massive new oil deal with Pakistan. So what was really going on here? Let's get into it and untangle this whole thing. Okay, so it all kicks off with two announcements that dropped at the same time and honestly seem to completely contradict each other. On one hand, you've got a big economic penalty. On the other, a landmark energy promise. Let's take a look at what was actually said. And there it is. That's the quote that set this whole thing off. The statement from then President Trump was just extraordinary. I mean, he wasn't just talking about an oil deal. He casually throws in that Pakistan could one day sell that oil to its arch rival, India. That's a truly radical idea, especially in the context of South Asian politics. When you put it side by side like this, the contrast is just, wow. It's incredibly stark. For Pakistan, there's the promise of a huge energy development deal. And for India, the very real threat of heavy tariffs and other penalties. You couldn't ask for a clearer example of a simultaneous pivot, rewarding one nation while putting the squeeze on another. Now, if you take it at face value, this deal with Pakistan looks like a classic geopolitical power play. So let's explore that angle. What was the strategic thinking here, and what were the potential benefits that both sides were hoping to get out of such an ambitious partnership? So, from the perspective of the United States, this move was doing a few things at once. Strategically, it's a pretty clear play to push back against Chinese and Russian influence in that part of the world. Diplomatically, it was a chance to mend fences with Pakistan, a relationship that had been really strained for years. And of course, there's the money. Economically, it was about opening up a huge, untapped energy market for American companies. For Pakistan, though, the stakes were way higher. I mean, the country has been dealing with a really severe economic crisis and is just desperate for foreign investment. So a deal like this, it looks like a potential lifeline. The dream for them is, of course, energy independence, which would slash their massive import bill and give them a whole lot more geopolitical leverage with their powerful neighbors. So you've got this grand promise on the table. It sounds great. But as analysts and reporters started to look a little closer, some pretty big questions started popping up. The main one being, how real was any of this? And this is the question that started appearing everywhere, And for very good reason. I mean, a deal of this size should have a paper trail. You'd expect to see signed documents, press conferences, financial details. But in this case, all you could hear was, crickets. This is where it gets really telling. When people started digging for details, they came up with nothing. The financial value? Nope, undisclosed. An implementation plan? Not clear. Had an American company been selected? No. Did Pakistan even put out an official statement? Not at the time. Was there a signed agreement? Nope. It was, for all intents and purposes, an announcement that seemed to be built on thin air. Now, the skepticism here wasn't just coming out of nowhere. It gets even deeper when you put this whole announcement into its historical context. You see, this wasn't the first time Pakistan had been on the brink of an energy miracle, one that never quite happened. It really does fit a familiar pattern of disappointment. You look back to the 2000s, and there was the massive Tapi gas pipeline project. That stalled. Then, more recently in 2019, there were huge hopes for a giant discovery by ExxonMobil, but that was eventually dismissed as a false alarm. So this new deal starts to feel a lot like the latest chapter in a long story of unfulfilled promises. And it's not just about history. The practical, on-the-ground challenges are just immense. First, geologically, a lot of experts were asking, are the reserves even there? Second, security. Any foreign project in a volatile region like Baluchistan would be a huge target for attacks. And finally, geopolitics. There's no way China would just sit back and welcome a major U.S. energy project right next door to its own flagship investment, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. Okay, so if the oil deal was pretty much all smoke and mirrors, what was really going on? Well, it turns out there was another, much more conventional deal being talked about at the very same time. And it's really important to separate the sensational oil news from this much more traditional trade agreement. See, there were actual talks happening where the US would lower its pretty high tariffs on Pakistani goods, things like textiles, and in return, Pakistan would buy more American equipment. This was a much more believable negotiation, even if it didn't grab the same headline. But here's the thing. Even if the oil deal itself was pure political theater, the announcement alone sent some really powerful signals across the region. It was absolutely a move that could put a strain on US-India relations, it would definitely provoke China, and, theoretically, if it ever did happen, it could even change the whole region's dependence on oil from the Middle East. Which brings us to the big final question. At the end of the day, what are we looking at here? Was this whole flurry of announcements a sign of a real calculated shift in American strategy in South Asia? Or was it just political theater? A huge, bold statement made to grab headlines, put some pressure on India, and give a symbolic nod to Pakistan, all without much substance behind it? That's the question we're left with.